Merry Christmas! It is officially Christmas morning, victory Christmas morning, and the Browns are 10-5 on the season. Joining me today on this lovely Christmas morning is the one and only Adam the Bull and the Grinch of UCSS himself, Jason Lloyd. If you want to see G. Bush and Earl, their reactions, well, it's on the post-game show from yesterday. You can go back, you can watch that. It was a emphatic win for the Browns, an ass-kicking, if I do say so myself. And Bull, real quick, your initial thoughts on the Browns' 36-22 win over the Houston Texans.
An absolutely dominating effort, guys. The special teams was a disaster. That's the only thing the Texans did when the game was in doubt was the kick return, and then obviously both the punter and kicker got hurt, which are concerns going forward. But offensively and defensively, at least when the first-team defense was in, an absolute ass-kicking by the Browns. The Texans could not move the ball at all on the starting defense at all. They did nothing until the Browns, in the early mid fourth quarter started putting in all their backups and had to bring in their starters. And the offense, what can you say? We'll get into it. But Flacco to Cooper, I mean, is this the new Montana to Rice? What are we thinking here, guys? It's unbelievable.
Jason?
Unbelievable.
Joe Flacco's the team passing leader already for the Browns this year in 4 games.
Yeah.
And I'm not the Grinch. I guess that's going to stick now, huh? I'm just the Grinch in July. I'll be the Grinch of UCSS.
Yes.
I mean, I joked with you guys during the chat, during the game. It's time for Joe Flacco to take a drug test. I'm sure the NFL will have him lined up this week to pee in a cup. This is unbelievable. Who could have thought 3 straight games, 300-plus yards, first time in his career he's ever done it. It's unbelievable this way this guy's playing right now. I have no idea how long it's going to last, but I am here for it because the Browns have become the best story in the NFL.
It's
guys,
awesome.
Joe Flacco broke the Browns record for most passing yards in the first 4 starts of the Browns' career with 1307. By the way, the guy he broke the record from was another ancient quarterback, Josh McCown, back in 2015. And
McCown was the last Browns quarterback to throw for 300 in 3 straight games. It was during that stretch bowl, which seems to make no sense. We're going to start with Flacco, and the numbers speak for themselves. Another 300-yard performance, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I was telling G on the postgame show yesterday that you go back, and it's not even the age with Joe Flacco. It's the fact that he hasn't been good in 6 years.
Right.
And I can make the case that this is the best 3-game stretch outside of his 2011 playoff run of his entire career. And he's found the fountain of youth, and he hasn't just sipped from it. He's fully polar plunged and baptized himself in the fountain of youth to refine and regain whatever moxie, mojo, arm strength, confidence, pick the adjective you want, to be able to come into a new offense off the couch in 2 weeks and perform like he is. Jason, you said it. I'm in total agreement. I'm out of words to describe what I've seen. So, Bull, maybe you can try to put into context exactly how well and how good Joe Flacco's played since becoming the starter for the Cleveland Browns.
I mean, you guys, you talked about he hasn't played well since leaving the Ravens. He really hasn't played well since they won that Super Bowl over a decade ago. His last couple of years with the Ravens, he was just, he was okay. And then he was a journeyman who bounced around late in his career. He got a couple of good games here and there. But no, since they won the Super Bowl over a decade ago, this guy who was, we keep saying on the couch, I'll say in his garage to change it up. I mean, you can't ask for more. He's had a decent amount of turnovers, but outside of the big one in his first game against the Rams, right? That was against the Rams. Yeah. Outside of that one, they haven't cost the team. They certainly haven't cost them a win. Now they
cost them 14 points last week.
Yeah, it did. But guys, the thing is, you can live. It feels like they got Brett Favre in his prime right now, or Josh Allen in a way without the running part. It's like, okay, that turnovers are part of the deal. He's going to have them, and the 2 he had yesterday didn't really matter. They were deep passes down the field, and one was at the end of the first half. They didn't really matter, but his play has been. There's nobody on the planet, including I imagine Joe Flacco himself, that could have thought he would play this well, been this dynamic. the good has so far outweighed the bad of the turnovers. It's been, yeah, you're right. You run out of words because it feels like we're in a dream world right now. Because how could this be happening? How
It's
could
a
this
Christmas
team?
miracle.
How could this team with the most turnovers in the NFL, the most turnovers in the NFL? By the way, the last team to make the playoffs, I don't know if you guys heard the stat during the game, but the last team to make the playoffs with the most turnovers in the NFL was Peyton Manning in that last year with the Broncos, and they won the Super Bowl.
Wow.
I missed that one.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that either. Joe gets all the credit. He's the one on the field making the throws, making the plays. But I know I've said, Bull, I know you've agreed. We've said on the show multiple times, Kevin gets the most out of his quarterbacks. Kevin puts his quarterbacks in position to succeed. This might be the most telling of all the guys that he's had to work with. When you look at the incredible job he did last year, Jacoby Brissett, even he squeezed wins out of P.J. Walker. Dorian Thompson-Robinson was coming on and starting to play well. Baker, he got good stuff out of Baker. This more than anything, he's turned back the clock and resurrected Joe. Go back as far as you want, put a year on it. I just think this is a perfect combination right now of play caller and quarterback who are absolutely in line. It was evident yesterday from the start. They were going to go deep. First play of the game, they saw something. The Texans were beat up in the secondary. They were without one of their top corners, and the Browns were just going to pound them deep from the start, and it worked. First play out, obviously the deep ball to Amari, and they hit Amari throughout. There's a connection between Joe and Amari. Obviously, there's a chemistry there. It's funny how after the first game we were talking about, Joe and Elijah Moore have this chemistry going back to the Jets. Well, that's gone. He is looking only for Amari. And when Amari's not open, he's looking for 85. And then when the building's on fire and he's got to throw it to somebody, then he throws it to Elijah. But that's clearly the pecking order right now. And just an incredible job Kevin has done structuring this offense, playing to Joe's strengths, putting him in position to succeed, and Flacco's making all the throws.
To follow up, I just want to follow up on what Jason said there because he's right on the money. First of all, Stefanski has just been
out of his mind.
Another planet.
Yeah,
there was zero debate. I don't care if he wins Coach of the Year. Really, it doesn't matter. He's the Coach of the Year. There's no doubt about it. He's been the best coach in the NFL this year. It's remarkable what he's done. But two things on the Cooper Joe connection. Number one, I think I forgot number one, so I'm just going to skip to number two. G. Bush used to always complain. I remember number one, so I'll get back to number one after. But G. Bush used to always complain that the Browns quarterbacks, and he complained about this a lot, and he was right with Baker throwing to Odell or whatever. He's like, we never just throw it to our best guy constantly. Get him the ball, get him the ball, get him the ball. And Joe Flacco does that.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, I have now figured out clearly. It took maybe a week. Amari Cooper's my best guy. It's not close. He's by far the best pass catcher on this team, so I'm going to get him the ball. And number two, the second part of that is Amari is always open. It doesn't matter if he's not open.
Even when he's not open, he's
right.
open.
Yeah. Joe throws him the ball as if he's always open because, and we'll get more into Amari Cooper later and some of the specifics with him, but yeah, I mean, he is just, you're right, he's just peppering him like crazy because he knows that Amari Cooper is going to come through almost all the time.
I was thinking on the first play of the game, the deep shot to Amari, I was thinking about what Leroy said. You don't ever double receiver because then it's just two guys chasing him. And I still believe that there's times to bracket receivers and double guys, but that Leroy was the first one I thought of on the Amari. It was double covered. And Joe just put it in an absolute perfect spot. It was like there was no one on him. It was unbelievable.
And the one thing with Flacco, and we're going to talk defense, special teams, the run game, and Cooper all coming up. I promise you we're going to get to that. But the one thing with Flacco that stands out to me, well, two things. A, he's just more mobile than I ever gave him credit for.
Yes.
Like
agreed.
Last year, I went back and watched all the games he played with the Jets. If there was a defender within 2 yards of him, he was pulling the Peyton Manning or the Tom Brady, just falling down, avoiding any chance of a hit. And now he's making plays where he's actually using his feet to extend plays in ways that I just didn't think was possible. And behind this makeshift offensive line for the Browns, that's been a big factor in them being able to sustain drives, especially yesterday without a kicker or a punter, where they were going for it on fourth downs. That fourth down completion to Amari Cooper may have been the play of the year for the Browns. Not just the throw, the escape, the catch by Amari was ridiculous. Unbelievable. But it's not just Amari. He has some sort of innate connection with Cooper and Njoku. And the touchdown pass to Njoku may have been his best throw as a Cleveland Brown. It was in perfect placement. They showed the back angle on one of the post-game shows afterwards from the end zone. He wasn't open. He threw Njoku open, and Njoku made a great catch, and that was just a magical play. But between the connection he has with Amari Cooper, the connection he has with David Njoku, and Elijah Moore got those 12 targets against the Rams. I don't think he's gotten 12 targets since then. He just goes to what he knows and trusts, and I think that's the simplification of what Stefanski's asking him to do. You may not know everybody yet, but you know these two guys, and we're going to force feed you to death until you prove you can stop it. And so far, at least in the last 3 weeks, defenses haven't been able to stop it.
And what's amazing is, like, with Stefanski, he has realized quickly since Joe's been here. Like, I think most coaches in this situation, starting Joe Flacco would have said, we're going to run the ball. Even if we struggle to run, we're going to keep running the ball. He's 38 years old. We can't make him pass that much. And especially when the turnovers start to happen, all right, we got to get conservative. But there had to be a part of Kevin, because I know there was a part of me. Nobody wants to see Dustin Hopkins hurt. Nobody wants to see Bojorquez hurt. Obviously, we need those guys. But there's a little part of Kevin that's like, yes, I can go for it every fourth down. I can go for 2 every time. He's that type of guy, and I love that. And obviously, he doesn't want those guys hurt. Let me make it very clear. But that was the only benefit of them not playing, is that he could do that.
You know, now that you mentioned that,
I
can imagine. I can picture him on the sideline when Evan Washburn says, "Is there backup?" Nope, no other kickers. Nope.
Well, I said to G on the postgame show yesterday, you know, obviously you hope they're back, but a bigger loss, a punter or a kicker. And G said the kicker's not even close. And I said, well, I agree with you. But on the other hand, I think Stefanski likes the flexibility of having 4 plays to get 10 yards every time if he's in scoring position. So he's a mad scientist. And you called him an astronaut, Jason, on the show Friday. And when you sent me that without an explanation, I was like, Jason's an idiot. I don't know how he's going to make sense of this. And you did a great job, and he made perfect sense. I would call him a mad scientist. And he's just playing with different chemicals and seeing what kind of reactions he's getting in different test tubes. And, ooh, that one was sparkly and shiny. I need another sparkly, shiny one. Let me mix it again. But whatever he's doing, whatever the connection, like, we're going to find out in 10 years that Joe Flacco is Amari Cooper's son's godfather. Like, somehow they must have a connection that goes way back. And somehow Stefanski and Joe Flacco must have vacationed together in Cabo San Lucas in 2014 and talked football at a random resort over some Mai Tais at the bar. Like, I just refuse to believe that he's played so well, so quickly in a system that he's essentially a foreigner to, that there has to be a backstory that those two are laughing. Because they look the same. Like, they go to the same barber in Rocky River. Yeah. We already know that. Like,
sure,
there has to be more to this story than we're getting. But it has been so fun. And that's the word I used yesterday. It's fun to watch the Browns right now. Like, offense is clicking. The defense is playing well. And you could see Kevin Stefanski on the sideline. Joe Flacco has this big-ass cheesy smile on his face, like he just got a new Porsche for Christmas. Like, they're having fun, and that's infectious to the viewers watching.
Well, go ahead, Jason. Go ahead.
It's Christmas. We don't need to go very far down this road. But I have heard from a number of people who are out on the Browns after the whole Deshaun thing, who are back, who are like, I love watching this team. The cloud is hanging over, no matter which side of the fence you're on with that. The cloud that was hanging over this team is gone, at least for now. And people are all in on the Browns who told me they swore off the Browns. They weren't watching them this year. They didn't care, and now they are all in.
You know what's interesting about the Flacco situation is he was always he was never really appreciated in Baltimore.
I agree. We talked about this, yeah.
Right? And so he spent his whole career in Baltimore. He won a Super Bowl, and it always felt like he was along for the ride because they had this, all-time defense, and they won a lot of games. And, now even when he played great, like, I was never a big Flacco guy. I always thought he was just okay. And he played great in that postseason run. He was phenomenal, all-time great. Maybe the best run by a quarterback ever. Certainly one of the top 5 runs by a quarterback in the postseason. And here in Cleveland, it's the complete opposite. The entire city, the entire fan base around the world is in love with this guy. You can't say enough good things because even if you were a Watson supporter, as you said, Jason, even if you were on that side of the fence, there still was this feeling that everybody hates your quarterback because of what happened. And now, as you said earlier, Joe Flacco's the best story in the NFL. The Browns are the best story in the NFL. Everybody's lovey-dovey with the Browns now, and you want that. You could say you don't. You could say you don't mind being hated. Nobody likes being hated. The Browns were hated. Now they're loved, and Joe Flacco is feeling that love from the fans, and he's feeling appreciated at 38 years old, maybe more than he ever has. I'm sure he was appreciated by his teammates and his coaches, but I don't think he's ever, maybe I'm crazy, but I don't think he was ever appreciated by Ravens fans as much as he's appreciated by Browns fans right now.
I don't think you're crazy. I don't know. Like, listen, we're not in the Ravens community, but nationally, he was not respected as the guy. Mm-hmm. Like he's getting the credit for now.
It's crazy. And speaking of elite defenses, Bull, let's talk a little bit about the Browns' defensive performance. 1 second.
I got to ask one other question before we go to defense. Joe Thomas tweeted yesterday, if Joe Flacco wins a Super Bowl with the Browns, does he go in the Hall of Fame? Now, I never thought of Joe Flacco as a Hall of Famer at all. And but if you win 2 Super Bowls,
yeah.
I mean, I don't think Eli Manning statistically is better than Joe Flacco. I don't think of Eli Manning as a Hall of Famer, but everybody thinks he's going to get in because he got 2 Super Bowls. Is Joe Flacco going to be a Hall of Famer if the Browns win a Super Bowl with him?
I have to look deeper into the numbers and see. I can't say flippantly, but I do know like basketball. We've said on the show, everybody goes in the basketball hall. Yeah. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
they let anybody in that thing. Baseball is the most stringent to get in, I think. And football is probably below that, but not by much. Like the football to get in the Hall of Fame, it's hard. There's a committee, and we have 2 people locally who are on the Hall of Fame committee, and Mary Kay and Tony Grossi, and you make your case for you support your guy, and then they go back and forth in dialogue. It's a thing. I think he's up for consideration for sure. I think I was half watching at this point. I was dozing off on the couch, but didn't they show was it the quarterbacks who have won Super Bowls with multiple teams? Is that what I saw with
it's
Peyton
not a lot.
And the Colts and Broncos? It's not a lot. And I think everybody else on that list is probably in the Hall of Fame.
I would be a hypocrite, Bull, as a staunch Eli Manning to the Hall of Fame supporter, like the driver of that bus. I'd be a hypocrite to go against Joe Flacco, even though I don't think, based on their non-playoff body of work, I don't think either's a Hall of Famer. But the success they've had in the postseason, if you come through at that position on the biggest stage when the lights are the brightest, especially if he does it coming off, we don't want to use coming off the couch. How about coming out of bed, coming out of his bed in South Jersey? To lead the Browns to a Super Bowl, a franchise that hasn't won that in 50 years.
No, what do you mean 50 years?
Or
never.
Ever. Well, I'm going back to the championships but you're right. Yeah, never.
Those championships don't count. Pre-Super Bowl, who cares?
Okay, then never. To do something that's never happened before, I think he would find his way into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and it'd be a hell of a story. And the Joe Thomas celebration we had in Canton this year, just saying, if Flacco wins a Super Bowl here, would it be bigger than Joe Thomas's?
No.
I'm just figured to ask. All right, let's talk defense for a second.
The parade would be the biggest thing ever.
The Super Bowl parade would be, yes.
Would be bedlam.
Yes. And Jason, you'd have to work that day.
And if Joe plays, let's say he continues to play. Guys, the reality is if Joe Flacco continues to play at this level, the Browns can win a Super Bowl.
They can beat anybody.
100%.
Yeah.
They can beat anybody. Especially when the defense is playing at the level it has. Two weeks in a row.
Yeah. 0
legitimate drives against the Browns defense has ended in a touchdown. The 14-point Chicago scored was off a pick 6 and an interception that led the Bears to the 1-yard line. They needed 1 yard to score. Yesterday, on Sunday, the only real touchdown the Texans scored before garbage time came on a kick return touchdown. Back-to-back, essentially shutouts for this Browns defense, which seems to be clicking. Do you guys want to start with the poor performance of the backups before we get to the
Hang on, let me make one more Flacco point because I was looking it up while we were talking about this. Quarterbacks to go to multiple Super Bowls with multiple teams. I found the list. Tom Brady.
Hall of Fame.
Peyton Manning.
Hall of Fame.
Kurt Warner.
Hall of Fame.
And Craig Morton, who I admit I've never heard of. For the Cowboys and Broncos. I have no idea who that is.
I don't think he was
who that is?
Was he a starter in either of those games?
It says, it's according to this. I've never heard of the guy. So I don't know. Craig Morton, Cowboys and Broncos. But, I guess we're really getting ahead of ourselves. Bull and I pride ourselves on never being prisoner of the moment. But since we're crowning the Browns Super Bowl champs today, we might as well put Joe Flacco in the Hall of Fame, too, if that happens.
Bull, do you want to start with the secondary defenders, the backups coming in and giving up 14 points in 4 minutes, or do you want to start with the starters playing another dominant performance? We got to talk both, but I'll let you choose.
Listen, the second team defense did a bad job in the fourth quarter. You don't want to see a situation that happened where the starting defense had to come in again to put the game away, because there's no excuse for that. The Texans were a mess, and the second team defense, which, with all the injuries, obviously the defense hasn't been crushed as much as the offense by injuries, but the second team defense is kind of like a third team defense in a way compared to most teams. It was bad. And I was nervous when Za'Darius Smith got hurt. Apparently, he was fine because I saw him celebrating after the game, and he was fine because he had his best game of the year.
Absolutely.
But so that was a slight negative. But they were up by 29 points, whatever it was, and I don't want to get too worked up about it.
I don't care.
It's hard to maintain focus in that situation.
I don't care. And in moments that matter, when the game was on the line.
Yeah.
Last week they gave up 3 points? Really is that what it was? And this week, I mean,
the only reason I care is because the Browns felt like they had to put their starters back in. That was the only reason I cared.
Yeah, and I think they were doing that because it's week 15, 16, and the playoffs are on the line, and they weren't taking any chances. They were still going to win that game.
Yep.
But what matters to me is that the last 2 weeks, this defense has played out of its mind when they haven't been put in impossible situations like a sudden change turnover at the goal line or a pick six or kick return for a touchdown today. When they're on the field lining up 1st and 10, from the plus side of the field, they're getting stops and they're getting off the field. So, and hey, this is actually probably a good thing because now Jim Schwartz has something to chew ass on in this short week where it's not like you guys are playing so great. I mean, it's a really, between the holiday and the Thursday game, I don't even know what their schedule is. They haven't released it for this week. It's going to be a really short week, but he's going to be on them every minute that he can between now and then, because now at least he's got something to hold up and say, you guys aren't as good as you think you are. So it probably will work out to be a good thing, but I'm not at all concerned.
Couple of things I want to point out. Bull, you mentioned Za'Darius Smith. By far his best game as a Cleveland Brown. He had the 2 sacks. He had a third one that got called back with an MJ Emerson penalty. But overall, Za'Darius Smith, but a truly dominant performance opposite of Myles Garrett, who was held without a pressure today. And this now makes 4 games in a row without a legit registered sack. He did have the sack against Jacksonville, but it was a 2-point conversion. He's still stuck at 13, but I feel like this was one of the games where the stat sheet doesn't show Myles, but I did feel his presence. And it was pretty evident that Houston was shifting their offensive line to his side, chipping it with a tight end or a running back, and that was leaving Za'Darius one-on-one. And Za'Darius just made mincemeat out of the Texans' right tackle. So this was a game that the stat sheet may not show up for Myles, but his impact was certainly felt. JOK with another interception off a tip pass from Shelby Harris, who I thought played a pretty good game. Dalvin Tomlinson once again. Emerson had a couple penalties, but overall, the Texans were unable to mount any sort of consistent offensive drives going. And I thought the secondary, especially the safeties who have been called upon into action in Harmon and Hickman and Bell, did a pretty damn good job holding their own, all things considered, against an offense in Houston that has proven to be explosive this season, despite some of their better players being out on Sunday.
Yeah, I thought Hickman played very well. I thought you mentioned a lot of guys. Another guy I thought played extremely well was Sione Takitaki. I think he led the team in tackles. I mean, he made a lot of plays in this game, and you're right. I mean, think about this, guys. You have your top 3 safeties are out. You wouldn't know it the way the 4th, 5th, and 6th safeties have played. I mean, you really wouldn't know it. The Texans did nothing in the passing game. There was really not a play ever where I was like, oh, well, if you had Grant Delpit or Juan Thornhill, you would have been in better shape. And think about it. Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward are still not right. Now, I don't know where they're going to be physically by the time we get to the playoffs. Hopefully they'll be closer to 100%. But they're like, Myles Garrett's not playing his best football right now. Neither is Denzel Ward. They're still playing pretty well. And overall, like, there was a lull in those 2 weeks against the Rams and
Denver.
What'd you say?
Denver.
And Denver, thank you. Where it felt like the defense was kind of coming apart a little bit, right? Other guys, Myles was banged up, Ward was banged up, and other guys weren't stepping up. Well, since those 2 games, it's not just that Myles is getting healthier and that Denzel's back. It's also that other guys have really stepped up. Za'Darius, Dalvin Tomlinson, they're both playing their best football at this time of year. Obviously, JOK has been great. Taki's playing great football. Ronnie Hickman's been an absolute find. And Greg Newsom's playing his best football right now, too. So you have some other guys. Your second tier guys, if you will. Not second tier, but in the grand scheme of like, Denzel and Miles are my top tier players, and now my tier 2 players, those guys are playing closer to tier 1 players lately, and it's been really fun to see.
Taki 7 tackles, JOK 6, Ronnie Hickman 6, and D'Anthony Bell 5. So you got 11 combined tackles from your backup safeties. I agree with you. They haven't missed a beat. We got plenty of months this offseason to talk about what you do with all these guys that are playing this well. But when both your starting safeties go down and these guys come in and play as well as they have, nobody could have seen that coming.
By the
Alex
way,
Wright, I thought, played a good game too. Another guy who's a rotational piece who had another sack. And it's a testament to Andrew Berry stacking talent and a testament for Jim Schwartz for being able to get the most out of this defensive talent. But outside of those 2 games, Bull, like, it really hasn't mattered who's been in. They've played at a level that is as good as any team in football. And today, Sunday, one thing I want to point out, this was a road game. And I showed you guys on Friday the home road splits, and the Browns on the road have been averaging 31.7 opponent points against. They'd only had 11 sacks in 6 road games. They stepped up, showed out, and played one of their better overall performances on the road. And granted, C.J. Stroud was out, and they were missing some key pieces on offense for Houston, but the Browns are missing key pieces too. So I don't want to hear that as any type of excuse. It was a dominant defensive performance on the road, which is something we hadn't seen yet from this particular unit.
Yeah, no doubt. I thought that the home road part of this was mostly coincidental due to just the teams you played and the injuries at the time. I wasn't totally buying that there was something more to it. Obviously, it's an advantage, or at least not to the point of the massive differential.
Not a 1-point difference.
Right. Because obviously there's an advantage being at home. And I can't, guys, what is this crowd going to be like Thursday night?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Absurd.
Yeah. With a chance to clinch for sure. They're going to the playoffs, but a chance to clinch it and make it official.
Yeah.
It being a night game, hopefully people will fill up the Muni lot. It's been down the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, right.
A little strange, but no, I think Thursday night, that place will be – I remember the last time the Jets were in, what was it, Thursday night, wasn't it?
Baker Mayfield, yeah.
Yep.
And that place was wild. I expect this to be even better.
And this will be, it's a holiday week, so probably a lot of people are not working Friday. It's just going to be – it's going to be
awesome.
Crazy.
It's going to be awesome.
And we'll get to it more later in the show, but if the Ravens lose tonight to the Niners, then
the game's already played, Bull. Nink, wink, wink.
No, the game is a Monday night football game.
Jason.
Oh, I messed up.
Unwinked.
I gave it away.
So let's talk a little special teams here, guys, because it is the one thing we don't have answers on. Dustin Hopkins tweaked his hamstring chasing down Dameon Pierce. Corey Bojorquez somehow, somewhere got hurt, and I'm not sure if anyone knows exactly when the injury was sustained. But first, let's start with this. How big and how worried are you that either of these injuries are something that's going to affect Hopkins or Bojorquez? Not necessarily this week on a short week, but substantially down in the playoff run.
I'm worried about Hopkins for sure. Hamstrings are, we don't know how bad it is. I'm with the kicker, it's kind of a big deal. That could be a 3-4 week injury, and Browns don't have that long. Sit on the rest of the season. It doesn't matter. The Jets game doesn't matter. The Bengals, whatever. But man, you really want to see him wild card weekend. So until we get more information right now, I'm very concerned about the Hopkins thing.
Hopkins has been the kicker. Listen, they could find another punter. Bojorquez has done a really nice job.
Yeah.
But I can find a punter. Like, there's not the pressure on the punter that there is on the kicker.
Yeah. Right.
And this guy has been, one of the top 3 kickers in the league. He's been as good as anybody.
Absolutely.
And so he's been absolute lights out from 50 plus. And in the playoffs, when you're playing really good teams, I agree with you, Jason. The next 2 weeks, I don't care. They need to get Hopkins back for the playoffs, but if it's, I thought that they said a quad originally, but it was a hamstring.
I thought it was hamstring.
Okay.
Hamstring.
Either way, that's an injury that doesn't usually heal quickly.
No.
And the problem is, the Browns may be in a position, even if he's able to potentially play in the playoffs, like you might have to have 2 kickers on the roster just in case if he's
and that's
not 100%.
You're right. Like that's a killer to waste a roster spot on a second kicker. But you can't go into playoff game. I mean, we're a couple weeks out yet. Maybe we'll have a better feel on it then. But boy, you can't really go into a playoff game risking not having a kicker in a playoff game.
No.
And I didn't hear the one thing we still don't know. Is it his kicking leg or his plant leg? And I'm not sure how much of a difference that actually makes, but I would assume if it's his kicking leg, if it's his right leg, they'll be even more cautious working him back in. Yeah. And, I think if you've ever played sports, you've pulled a muscle, and hamstrings are the one especially finicky one, because the only real way to heal it is to rest.
Yep.
There's not stem or PT or anything. It's a rest situation. And some people heal significantly faster than others. Kickers sometimes are great athletes. Sometimes they're ordinary Joes with a massive boot. So I don't know which one Dustin Hopkins is, but I agree with you guys. They need somebody immediately. And you mentioned Robbie Gould, Bull. I know it's been your guy before the season. Is he your first call?
I know he just announced his retirement like a week or two ago, but I'm like, he was my guy.
Joe Flacco was retired too.
Right. I before the season, I was like, well, it's got to be Robbie Gould. And then it turned out this guy was the right call. Without a doubt, Dustin Hopkins been phenomenal. I would think he'd be the guy. I mean, I want a guy who's made playoff kicks and been good in the playoffs, and he has been. He's kicked in big games. I don't want we can't just go with some unknown, young kicker.
You can't bring Cade York back.
No, I think technically he's on the Giants roster, isn't he?
He got hurt.
Even though he's not playing.
Oh, he got hurt. Yeah.
Oh, he's hurt. Yeah. Well, no, they certainly were not going to bring him back anyway. But you don't. But I feel like you have to go get a veteran unless you're confident Hopkins is going to be back for the playoffs. Then okay, if you want to bring in a young guy for 2 weeks to finish the season, okay, I can live with that. But if you're unsure at all, you have to bring in that veteran now so he can get, not in shape, but get some rhythm and used to the operation going into the playoffs. But hopefully this won't cost them, because in offense and defense, they finally stayed healthy in a game for once, and now they lose their kicker and punter. Unbelievable.
Jason, you mentioned this in the group chat, but one of the things when Hopkins went down, we were all kind of surprised Bjorquez didn't have an opportunity to kick a 36-yarder towards the end of the half when Flacco ended up throwing his second interception. I'm assuming that means he just doesn't have that in his arsenal, but also I hadn't thought of this, and you mentioned it. He's the holder.
Right.
And if he's kicking, they showed shots of DTR on the sideline practicing his holding. Who knows the last time DTR actually held a kick in a game, but it just throws a little wrinkle into the equation for the Browns. But I'll be honest, they've overcome so many injuries at significant positions, found guys like Joe Flacco out of his living room to come in and do what he's done, that I'm not too worried about Andrew Berry being able to scour the depths of the United States to find somebody who can make a kick if needed, especially just for 2 weeks before, hopefully, knock on wood, Dustin Hopkins is able to come back and resume his duties as the Browns starting kicker.
Yeah, you can't if you have the punter. I mentioned in the chat, I don't know why the NFL doesn't go back to having the backup quarterback be the holder all the time, because now and maybe Bojorquez just isn't good at kicking it off the ground. It is significantly different kicking it off flat ground with somebody holding it versus dropping it out of your hands.
Well, he could drop kick. You could technically drop kick for field goals.
Well, yeah, I guess you can. I don't know. It's something I'm concerned about. I was scanning looking for names. Brett Maher is available. He was a guy who had a terrible couple of weeks with the Rams and was released earlier this year. I think he's the most recent cut, I think. I don't know.
He was the one that had the yips last season for Dallas, but had been a
I can't trust him in the playoffs. I can't do that.
I don't know who else is out there other than your boy Robbie Gould. I don't know who else really is whoever they get, obviously, although we didn't feel great about Dustin Hopkins when he first got here either. You're like, who's this guy?
It is crazy, and I put this in the group text. The Chargers had Dustin Hopkins and Cameron Dicker this offseason in a kicking battle, and Cameron Dicker in his career is now 101 of 103 in kicks. So Dustin Hopkins has been unbelievable. Like, those have been two of the three best kickers in football this year, along with Dallas's kicker, and they had him in the same kicking room. It has to be the most talented kicking room in any training camp.
Well, they're terrible at picking head coaches, but they're great at finding kickers. Is there anybody left that hasn't been fired with the Chargers that the Browns can call and say, hey, who do you like? Who should we go get as a kicker?
Mike Nugent, didn't he used to kick for him back in the day? Is Nick Folk still out there? Is he on some team?
I feel like he's on a team.
I'll have to do some digging. Actually, I think he's on the Patriots. I'm pretty sure he's on the Patriots. Yeah, but the Patriots drafted a kicker. I'll do some digging, but we'll get some injury update from Kevin Stefanski later today on the severity of said injury. And I think we're all in the same boat that by Thursday, it'll be okay. But for the postseason, you need D-Hop or at least have some contingency plan moving forward. I want to ask one more question on special teams, then we'll get to Amari Cooper's record-breaking day. But they gave up a kick return touchdown. They allowed an onside kick to be recovered. Is it just the special teams has been pretty damn good? Just a fluke bad day for the Browns, or anything that we should be a little more concerned about as we get to the final 2 weeks of the regular season?
I think it was just I'm not terribly concerned about. I'm more concerned with the kickoff return than the botched onside kick. It looked like I didn't even see who it hit. It just
David Bell.
Oh well, of course it's David Bell. He just didn't recover it. But the kickoff return, we were talking on the show a couple weeks ago about how often you see that anymore. You just never see kicks go back for touchdowns anymore. They're almost all touchbacks. So that was a little disappointing, and it felt like the Browns were in total control, and that gave Houston a little bit of life and let them back in the game for a little bit. So I guess I'd be more concerned with that than anything. But overall, I think the units have been good enough that, again, this is sort of like if Jim Schwartz wants something to get on these guys about, well, now they have it on special teams too. If anything, it's just a reminder that you guys aren't as good as you think you are, and we still have some stuff to clean up.
Bull?
I'm not concerned any more than I was coming into the game. The onside kick is a freak thing. The kick return, they did a really poor job on that. I don't even think they touched him on that kick return. But again, that's a freak thing too. Overall, they haven't done a bad job there. So no, I'm not really concerned about it. One other thing, guys, I was trying to find some free agent kickers. I think I found if you're not going to get Robbie Gould out of retirement, the guy might be Ryan Suckup.
Yeah, I remember him.
Remember him?
Former Tennessee kicker.
Yeah, I remember him.
He kicked now. He did not have a last year. He hasn't played this year. Last year, he only made 82% of his field goals. I guess that's not that bad. He was 31 of 38 of field goals. The problem was it was really over 50. Under 50 last year, he only missed 2 out of 47. He was, let's see, 36. He was really good last year. Not 47, I'm sorry. He was 31 of 38 overall. He was 29 of 31 under 50 yards, including 12 of 12, 49 to 50. But remember, he was the Buccaneers kicker when they won the Super Bowl with Brady.
Yeah.
And that's not that long ago. So he's kicked in big games. So I would think Robbie Gould and Ryan Suckup are probably the two best options for the Browns right now.
And if they need a punter, let's call Tyvis, because I'm sure Tyvis in his mind could be the next great Browns punter. Speaking of great Browns performances, guys, Amari Cooper, 11 catches, 265 yards today, set it's the highest receiving total for any player in a game this season. He broke DJ Moore's record. He also set a new Browns record for most yards in a single game, breaking Josh Gordon's record. Jason, I'll start with you. Where does Amari Cooper's performance against Houston rank among the all-time great Browns performances, single game-wise, you've ever seen?
Well, we've talked about they've never had a receiver go back-to-back 1,000 yards until today, or until this weekend when Amari did it. So it's got to be pretty high up there. He broke the Josh Gordon record for most yards in a single game, but there's nothing about this game. The sideline catch was unbelievable. It was one of the best catches I've ever seen, but it wasn't like a huge moment. It was just a great catch. And this whole game, it wasn't a game with a lot of drama and excitement. The Browns were in control from the start. And it's not a playoff game; it's a regular season game, so it's hard to call it one of the greatest ever. But statistically, he was phenomenal. And again, it just felt like they found weaknesses in Houston's defense on film, and they knew coming in they were going to attack them deep. They were going to go deep with Amari. We keep talking about Marquise Goodwin being the deep shot. Well, he tried that and it was picked off. But the Amari deep routes were working, and I mean, it was. I can't declare it one of the greatest of all time. But man, it was an incredible performance by him.
Well,
I think the reason there was no drama, Jason, is because of Amari Cooper.
You're probably right.
Because he blew. True. I mean, first of all, we've seen players make great catches, right? We go back to Odell Beckham. We go back to T. Higgins a few weeks ago, made that unbelievable play at the goal line. But this guy, I heard Earl say on the postgame show yesterday, he's underrated. I don't think Amari Cooper's underrated. I think he is. Everybody knows how good this guy is. But I think there's an aspect of his game that just, it's something that people don't really talk about. And he is absolutely, in my opinion, as good as any player I've ever seen. And that's body control.
Mm-hmm.
You see receivers all the time step out of bounds when they could have easily gotten their feet down. There's a play at the sidelines. You think a guy makes the catch, but he has a toe out of bounds. That catch you talked about, Jason, that was one of the greatest catches you've ever seen. Not only did he get 2 feet in, as he was his body was essentially out of bounds, his body, but his feet. And not only did he get 2 feet in, if you look at it real closely, he actually got 3 feet in. He went 1, 2, 1. I mean, it was. I don't know that there's more than many guys that could do that, and he does it every time. How many times we've seen it 2 weeks in a row, where Amari Cooper is going down the sidelines after catching the ball. He looks like he's losing his balance, and maybe he's going to get pushed out of bounds, and he rights the ship, and he's able to get into the end zone. He's done that 2 weeks in a row on plays where a lot of guys would have gone out of bounds or been knocked out of bounds. His body control on the sideline, in the end zone, is, I think, unmatched. I've never seen a guy, and we've seen these other Browns receivers outside of Njoku, who consistently foot out of bounds. I was watching a little bit after the Browns of the Lions and the Vikings. And there was an easy play for a young receiver, Jameson Williams, the guy from Alabama?
Yeah, Jameson.
Yeah.
And like, he's wide open for a pass, and he steps out of bounds before catching it. And it's like, and you see these things all the time, and you don't really think about it, but Amari Cooper is just super elite when it comes to that. He is just a total professional. I mean, it's like he and Nick Chubb are cut from the exact same cloth. There's no showboating. There's no look at me. There's no guys trash talk him. Guys trash talk Nick Chubb. He doesn't go back. And I'm not saying you're bad if you do. I'm just saying this is not who he is. There's no histrionics. There's no going bananas when the referee doesn't call it. He just makes the play time and time again. He is phenomenal. I think this is the best performance. I mean, Josh Gordon 10 years ago had some performances that were amazing, and was just a freak of nature. But those games didn't matter. Browns were terrible.
Yeah, and maybe that's what I'm going off of. I knew Josh Gordon had monster games, but when he was getting close to the record, I'm sitting there thinking, well, who has the record? It doesn't even register with me. It's not like I remember, you know what I mean? It's not like you remember. Right. I remember Josh Gordon had that record on that incredible game. It's just kind of filed away as just another game. And maybe 10 years from now, we'll look back on this and we will remember this game as the Amari game. And, you know, when he really helped put the Browns over the top on making the playoffs and some of those incredible catches. It's just hard for me in the moment to declare this is one of the greatest ever. But I agree with everything you said. His body control, his feet along the sidelines. We've seen it for 2 years now. Yeah. The way that he can manipulate manipulate his body and get his feet in. He could teach a clinic on it. He could be a receivers coach when he retires and showing these guys how to do it.
Well, I think we're underestimated a couple of the time, distance, and downs of the catches. I mean, the fourth down catch on the sideline you referred to, Jason, was a fourth down play. They don't have a punter, so you're going for it.
Not to mention, he was screened on that. Like,
he is.
I don't know if he even saw the ball.
Incredible. He also had the fourth down catch on the last drive of the game that sealed the deal when the starters had to come back in.
Yep.
He had a couple, and the first play of the game that sets the tone. The 75-yard touchdown, that whole play design. If you go back and watch, Flacco had Njoku wide open, 15 yards across the middle. Could have been an easy toss to Njoku. Probably would have picked up an extra 10 yards in yak. But says, I see a backup cornerback. That was the first play that happened after Steven Nelson got hurt and didn't return. He runs a double move on the backup cornerback in an already banged up secondary. The rookie grabs his shirt, yanks him, still gets away from him, catches it. Flacco has the innate ability to loft the ball up there like it's coming down from the moon into a bucket. And it's just perfect. And he's not the fastest. He's not the most athletic. He's not the most explosive. He's not going to make the wow catches in the same way as Justin Jefferson. He's not going to moss people like even David Njoku can. But he does everything well. And he might be the most well-rounded receiver in football without having one skill that is, I guess I take that back. His one skill that is absolutely elite is, as you guys mentioned, the body control and the situational awareness. But as far as a guy who has a little bit of everything, there may not be a guy that's more well-rounded than Amari Cooper. And I tweeted this out jokingly. And as I've sat on this for a night now, I kind of think I believe it a little more than even when I tweeted it out. But the best quarterback receiver combos in football right now are Tyreek and Tua. They're number one. I think you got Dak and CD at 2. And I think Flacco Amari could be in the conversation for 3 with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. And
are you not
at the moment, you mean?
At the moment, like healthy. Yeah. So like Burrow Chase is out because hurt. But like at the moment.
What about Kelsey? You're not counting him because he's the tight end?
No, I'm talking strictly. I guess he would go in there. But I'm saying like right now, wide receiver, quarterback. I think you could have a legitimate conversation.
I mean, Dak and CD Lamb, I had
them at 2. I had him at 2.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I missed
that.
So
Tyreek and Tua 1, Dak, CD 2. And then I think right now you can make the case that they're the 3rd best quarterback receiver combo in football. And you could tell me A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts, like, yeah, but right now, I think there's a real argument to be made. And I know it sounds crazy, but I'm a little crazy.
Yeah, you are a little crazy. By the way, let me give you another stat. Let me give you another stat on Amari Cooper here. So Amari Cooper coming into the game today, his season, which he had 985 yards coming into the game. Believe it or not, that he already was the 16th best season in Browns history in terms of receiving yards, 985. After today's game, remember, he was 16th on the Browns coming into the game. Where is he on the all-time Browns receiving yards in the season list after the game?
8th.
Right, top 10, yeah.
He's 3rd. He hopped over 13 guys, including himself.
Wow.
And he only needs 30 yards to pass Braylon Edwards for the 2nd most receiving yards in Browns history. Only Josh Gordon. He's not catching Josh Gordon. But, well, let's see if he has 2. No, even if he has another 500. Yeah, if he has 2 more 250-yard games, he'd pass Josh Gordon. But the Browns have never, besides Josh Gordon, have never had a 1,300-yard receiving season, and he is definitely going to get that. He's at 1,250 right now. 12.
It's funny, Bull.
1,250.
Tyvis, I tweeted at Tyvis during the game, and his response was, Amari's making G. Bush's wild preseason predictions come true on one night. And then he needed a game like that to kind of reach the lofty expectations we had, and we made those expectations thinking it was going to be Amari as the number 1 receiver for a healthy Deshaun Watson returning to prime. And for a little bit, we saw he had a great game with Watson against Arizona, but he's had his best games with Joe Flacco, and they're throwing the ball more. That's not an anti-Watson thing. I'm just saying his best game, the best receiving game in Browns history.
Yeah,
game with Joe Flacco, and Joe Flacco is putting up these crazy numbers, and part of the reason Flacco is putting up these crazy numbers is he's getting the most out of Njoku and the most out of Amari Cooper. It's been a perfect cohesion of offensive talent. You
know what's funny is that David Njoku had 6 catches for 44 yards and a touchdown. And when I was doing my podcast yesterday, I was like, he had a good game, but not a special game. And I'm like, before this year, even early this year, we would have been like, great game for David Njoku. Yeah. Now 6 for 44 and a touchdown for Njoku is just a good game.
Yeah.
You know,
the Joe Flacco effect, Flacco fever. Yeah. It's spreading so rapidly through Cleveland.
By the way, Mike, you said no offense to Deshaun Watson, but let's be honest. You asked a question on the show a couple of weeks ago. Would you rather have Nick Chubb or Deshaun Watson back? We'll get to the Nick Chubb angle of this in a minute. But forget Nick Chubb versus Deshaun Watson. If somebody said to you, you could have Deshaun Watson back next week, none of us would take it. We wouldn't want it.
Flacco.
You'd stick 100%. There's no chance you'd want. There's nobody, if they're being honest. There's going to be some people that would get mad at me for saying this, and there's going to be some people that are going to pretend that they would. But there is no way on earth you would rather have Deshaun Watson right now than Joe Flacco. No way.
No argument for me.
I can't argue that. That. It's wild.
Long term, we could have the conversation, but right now, for the next
it's gonna be a nuclear war.
The off season is gonna be fun because of
this.
Is this gonna be a bigger line in the sand than the Baker situation?
1,000,000%. This is gonna be so much more heated. I mean, I didn't want to talk about it. I really don't.
Let's save that for the offseason. That's an offseason conversation.
Yeah.
Race is a factor in this.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Sex is a factor in this. Like, it has all of the ingredients. It is going to be a nuclear war this offseason.
And the further, the better. If Joe Flacco continues to play well, and if the Browns go deep, every round they win, it gets ratcheted up another notch. But again, off-season conversation.
I joked in the chat, they can't bring Flacco back next year. He's playing too well. And I'm not kidding. They can't bring him back. He's
oh, my gosh.
Too well.
I'm not. We're going to move on because
right,
we can do a whole nother 3 hours on that by itself, and we will spend plenty of time this offseason. One last thing before we look at the playoff positioning for the Browns and what needs to happen and whatnot. But real quick, 5 minutes tops. They've become one-dimensional, and I think a lot of that's because the offensive line is just struggling to create room. They went to the Wildcat early to try and solve the running game issues. Is this situation salvageable, guys, or is this just a one-dimensional pass-first team? And before it, Flacco's earned the right to throw the ball as much as he has, but it's obviously harder to win in football when you're a predictable offense, and right now the Browns are pretty predictable.
I mean, they ran it. Jerome Ford had 15 carries today. It's not like they totally gave up on it. Pierre Strong had 5. They had 20 runs and Kareem Hunt had 7. Now, some of those were garbage time carries, obviously, but 27 carries, they're just not good. They're just not good at running the football, and it's not even the injuries. They had their starting center and both guards back today. But now you can argue how healthy were they really, but Bitonio was out there, Posick was out there, and Wyatt Teller was out there. And, we've talked about what a great run blocker Wyatt is at right guard, and everyone keeps telling me James Hudson is a ferocious right tackle at run blocking. Pass block is a different story, but he's the best run blocking tackle that they have. So they should be able to run it. It very well may be that their running backs aren't very good, which is what we've said all along, except for the 45-minute stretch when half the panel lost their mind and said that it was an elite running game. Outside of that, we've all pretty much been in agreement. Jerome Ford isn't really a feature back. And it very well could just be that these guys just aren't that good. And this is the way it's going to be the rest of the year. And they're just going to have to grind it out, gut it out, use the Wildcat, use screen passes, things like that, and call that the running game, because the rest of it just isn't working. But to this point, it hasn't mattered.
Guys, do you know how many times Joe Flacco was sacked in this game?
I don't think any. I think 0, isn't it?
You're correct. The answer is 0. So if the offensive line was such a problem,
right?
I feel like Joe Flacco didn't get touched. I mean, he did. He got hit after throwing a couple of times, but they were outstanding, the offensive line, in the passing game. And obviously they're not as a unit as good in the run defense. The run blocking. Last week, you could have blamed the offensive line a lot for it. This week, Jason, you're 100% right. You and I have been consistent on this all year. The Browns have not had a running game since Nick Chubb went down. Obviously, Ford's had his moments earlier in the season, but that he is completely cratered. Some of it's on the O-line. There's no doubt about it. But come on, if they had Nick Chubb, they'd at least he wouldn't be averaging 2 yards a carry. I mean, give me a break. Yeah. So I don't care what your offensive line is. My God, if this team had Nick Chubb, just Nick Chubb. I'm not asking for anybody else. Just Nick Chubb on this team. As you said, Jason, they tried to run. I mean, they didn't completely go to the pass. Their running backs were terrible in this game. I thought Pierre Strong had a couple of decent runs. But Jerome Ford, remember he had that one first down run where he got 10 yards?
Yep.
So he had that one run for 10 yards. His other 14 carries, he had 15 yards.
Feels about right.
Pierre Strong at 5 for 22 and Kareem Hunt 7 for 11. So their running backs, between them, 27 carries for 58 yards. That's barely over 2 yards a carry.
Yeah, that's bad.
And Stefanski started to use the screen game and some quick passes to get them involved in pseudo. I pronounced the P. I pronounced the silent P.
Little pseudo. It sounds like something you get at an Italian deli. Give me some pseudo, will you? Put it on the sandwich.
He's found ways to make the quick passing game, the short passing game, an extension of the running game, because they haven't had the success handing it off. And it's shocking to me that the play action game has been so successful, considering how disappointing the running game's been, because they still, time in, time again, the touchdown to Amari, play action, the first play of the game, 53-yard bomb to Amari, play action, the touchdown to Njoku, play action. That's still working despite the fact they can't actually generate any consistent running game. And my fear is at some point teams are just going to say, try and run the ball. Like, we're just not going to fall for the play action fake. But it hasn't happened yet, so keep doing it. Like,
guys,
don't stop.
Who's playing great football in the AFC?
The Browns.
Besides the Browns.
The Bills.
I mean, they barely beat the Chargers yesterday, Jason, or Saturday.
They won. They're coming. The Bills are coming.
But are they playing great defense? Let me rephrase. Who's playing great defense in the AFC besides the Browns?
Probably just the Browns.
Right? Baltimore's playing pretty well on defense.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I hear people say this all the time. Why do they fall for play action if the team can't run? That's the most the play action, teams fall for it because the fake is good, not because because if you think it's going to be a run, you're going after the running back, whether the running game has been successful or not. And Joe Flacco is great at the fake. That's the key. It's not about how good the running back is. It's about how good the quarterback is at convincing those players because they don't have to be fooled. You're shaking your head no. Mike.
I think there's some credence to that, but if you understand we're not afraid of your run game, then you don't just commit the same resources.
It's just a half second, though. It's just the half
all you
second
need.
freeze. It's not even, it's just that half second of what are they doing? That's all you need as a receiver to get open is just that split second. And, I wrote about it a couple weeks ago. I don't think we really talked about it on the show, how big of a believer Kevin Stefanski is in play action. And if you look at his numbers with him as the play caller, when they're on play action versus straight dropbacks, it's like an extra couple of yards per play. He is and when he met with Deshaun in Rusty Harden's office, and Deshaun said, critique me, give me something that you don't like, something I need to work on. The first thing Kevin went to is you need to be cleaner with your ball fakes, with play action. Like he doesn't talk about it a lot, but he is a huge believer in play action. And we're seeing it come to life now with Flacco. And Bull, you're right. He's so good on play action. He's fooled the camera. He fooled me today on one that I thought for sure was a run and it was a pass. He's so good at it. And it was such a big component to what Kevin does. What he likes is the quarterback under center running play action. That's a big staple that really hasn't been talked about in 4 years here. I feel like we haven't really discussed how important that is to Kevin's philosophy because they've had so much changes at quarterback. But when you just connect all the dots and put all the pieces together and start solving the puzzle, you see how important it is to him, and that's why he's having so much success with Joe. And
maybe we'll worry about it against Baltimore because their defense is really good if the Browns play them in the playoffs. But the Jets have a good defense, but it's not that good. It's not.
They totally threw up on themselves in the second half against
they
Washington.
gagged against Washington and Jacoby Brissett, and now they did end up kicking a game-winning field goal. Okay, but then they're playing the Bengals without DJ Reader. The Bengals have no run defense at all, so they have to commit their linebackers to stopping the run, and that's going to be – Bengals are easily fooled on play action. The Browns will take advantage of that. And then most likely in the first round of the playoffs, if the Browns are the 5 seed, which they're going to be if they don't win the division, they're going to play the AFC South winner. None of those teams are that good.
No.
Obviously, the Texans with C.J. Stroud are a better team, but it's not like their defense is that good. We just saw it here. I know it's banged up, but still, I'm just not worried about it. Maybe against Baltimore I'll be if we get to that point. But for now, I'm not worried about it.
It's fair. We're going to wrap up this Christmas edition of UCSS in 1 sec. But, Bull, the Browns have all their aspirations and goals still ahead of them. And the 1 seed is still technically in play. The division title is still technically in play. And they need some luck. They got to win out and need some luck. But if I had asked you before the season that on Christmas Day we'd have Joe Flacco as the starting quarterback of the Browns and a 1 seed and division title were still on the table, would you have believed me or would you slap me aside the head?
I probably would have. I don't believe in violence that much, but
that might warrant it, though.
That might warrant it. I would probably have
said not that much.
Not that much. A little bit. I believe in a little violence, but no. I mean, the Browns are. We were kind of busting. Not kind of. I was busting Earl's balls when he said they'd go 5-0 to end the season. At the time only because he said it was 80% chance, but. Now I think the Browns are going to win out. I mean,
the only way they don't is if they don't take the Bengals game seriously. I think, if they bench everybody, if they rest everyone, and if everything's wrapped up and they are taking it seriously and the Ravens have clinched the division. Otherwise, I mean, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid too for the first time. I think they're 5-0.
Right, but and the thing about that Bengals game is if the Ravens lose tonight to San Francisco, then and if the Ravens lose tonight, and the Browns beat the Jets, even if the Ravens, I think the Ravens play Miami. Is it Miami and then Pittsburgh? Yeah, I think they play Miami next week.
Yeah.
Even if Miami loses, let's say the Ravens lose to San Francisco but beat Miami, if the Browns win their next 2 games, then they will still be alive for the division going into the last week, because if the Browns beat the Bengals and the Ravens lose to the Steelers, the Browns would have the tiebreaker. They'd finish tied, and the Browns would have the tiebreaker in that scenario. So, obviously, if the Ravens beat the Niners, then the division's out the window. So and then you're likely to be in that scenario where the Browns are locked into the 5 seed, have nothing to play for against the Bengals, and maybe lose the game. But if the Ravens lose to the Niners, and I think they're going to tonight, we'll see if I'm right. But then everything's up for grabs. And if the Browns have something to play for, they will. Again, it's the NFL. This has been a weird year. The Bengals could beat the Browns. The Jets could beat the Browns. Anything's possible. But it would be a pretty significant upset in my mind if the Browns lost either of these games, assuming they're playing for something, which means they're very likely to finish 12-5, which would only be their second 12-win season.
Crazy.
Since they've joined the NFL. And that's crazy. They had when they were in the AAFC or whatever the hell it was before they were in the NFL. But Bernie Kosar went 12-4 in 86, and that's it. The only other time the Browns have won 12 games. What would be crazy is this is not unlikely at all. The Browns could win 12 games, have the second or third best record in the AFC, but ultimately
not the 5th seed.
Be a 5 seed, and they're not finishing any lower than 5. The Browns are going to win their division, or if they don't, they're going to be the 5 seed. I think that's pretty much locked in because nobody else has got more than 8 wins, right? Of the other, Buffalo's got 9. Sorry, Buffalo's got 9. But the Browns are unlikely to play Buffalo.
Yeah, I think Jason thinks that's a good.
It would be in the AFC Championship game if they played Buffalo, probably.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it that far out. I hope you're right that they've got the 5 seed locked up pretty much at this point. It's been such a wild year in the NFL. I wasn't really going to start looking at all that until after next week. But yeah, it'd be great if they go into week 18 no lower than the 5th seed. Imagine that.
If they could, listen, if they can't win the division, I would sit everybody against the Bengals. I
think I would too. Although they are just rolling. You'd hate to even have them break rhythm at all.
That's a good point.
Hey, let's save that conversation till we're there. I do not want to get too far ahead of ourselves because.
Yeah, all right. Mike, one thing we do know for sure, if the Browns beat the Jets, they clinch a playoff spot. Yep. Right now, they have a 99% chance to make the playoffs, but they are not officially clinched no matter what happens until they play Thursday. But if they beat the Jets, they officially clinch.
So we are back tomorrow in studio on a Tuesday, a secondary victory Tuesday, but it's a short week because the Browns host the Jets on Thursday Night Football. That means Friday, our TV program's a reactionary TV program for the first time ever. We're going to have to turn our minds and attentions to the New York Jets. And guys, there's a chance that we have a clinching playoff game to celebrate this week. And I didn't think that was possible with all the injuries that the Browns have sustained this year. It's a testament to the whole organization, everyone up and down, from the GM to the custodian. And it has been a fun Browns season to cover and be a part of. Any last thoughts before we bid farewell on this Christmas Monday, this victory Christmas Monday?
Yeah, Merry Christmas to everybody. Enjoy the holidays. Enjoy this week. We will be with you every day this week. We don't take a break for the holiday. Well, we'll be off Monday of New Year's Day, but
we'll have something up, I promise.
We'll put something up. Plus, also, as you said, the game's on Thursday. So normally on a Monday, we would be doing a show because we're recapping a game. But because the game's on Thursday this week, we're not going to do a show on Monday, but there will be some content up. We are with you where a lot of other TV and radio stations are taking vacation, taking breaks, not there. We will be with you all the time. And thanks to everybody that watched us and listened this year. And enjoy your time. Be safe on the holidays. Great win for the Browns. This is as much fun as I've had covering the Browns in the 13 years I've been covering the team.
Yeah, I agree. I've only been around them since 2018. 2020 was just weird. You couldn't even really enjoy it and celebrate it because what was going on in the world, nobody could gather, and It just didn't feel like a Browns playoff run. This does. And just enjoy it. Browns fans deserve it. You've been through so much. You've been through so much hell for so many years. Y'all deserve it. Just have fun and soak it up.
And that's my thing. Enjoy every second of this. There are people from all different corners and crevices of the internet that will try and tear down the Browns. Yeah, some of these people come from the crevices, the deepest, darkest trenches in the sea to come and try to ruin your parade. But the reality is the Browns are 10-5, have a chance to clinch on Thursday Night Football on national TV against the Jets team that, frankly, they should be able to beat. It's a Joe Flacco revenge game, and I cannot wait. I cannot wait to sit here on Thursday night, fingers crossed, celebrating a playoff berth for these Cleveland Browns. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for spending your Christmas morning with us and everyone who tuned in. We appreciate you for spending a little bit of Christmas with the UCSS clan. We got the full crew back in tomorrow, minus Jay, who's off this week taking vacation. The show is not. We appreciate you guys, and we will see you tomorrow on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. For Bull, for Jason, I'm McNuggets. Merry Christmas to all.
Merry Christmas.
And to all, a good night.
Feliz Navidad.